all systems go. Clear for liftoff. What's up, everyone? Tyler Tamboline here, aka ToeTagginTambo, back for another edition of the Takedown Breakdown. Got my guy Nades here with me. We're going to have a special guest. Mr. Sean Sullivan Jr. is going to come in later and take all the criticisms and the fun stuff too. But we love Sean and we appreciate him doing that, just like we had Tyler on last week. Shout out to him. And thanks again to MN Holla, who came on with us last week. A huge day for the community yesterday. Bring that up in a little bit. But Nades, you must have stayed up late to watch the tie ball game for your Packers, man. How'd that go?
Yeah, it was. It's frustrating, but hey, anytime you can you can get out with less than a loss is good. Fun game. That's all I care about. I know Discord was going back and forth and this and that. This team sucks. That team sucks. Blah blah blah. Like I was just happy it was a good game. Back and forth and fun, right? The last couple primetime games, I wanted to gouge my eyes out with pencils. It felt like because it was miserable there overall. Not the best Sunday, but we got two games on the docket tonight. Got some money back there. Freaking Adonai Mitchell, what a dumbass! I mean, we're gonna talk about that, but that made that game go completely different. That could have sped that game up big time, obviously there, and it was a pretty big game. And I know a lot of members benefited and some probably didn't, but that's just the nature of the beast and the way it goes. But overall, pretty good Sunday, and more importantly, the nation smashed in multiple different facets, not just MME. So we had some massive single entry wins, things like that. So overall, good day, and looking forward to breaking it down.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good one to break down. And by the way, spoiler alert: Mahomes broke the streak. He ended up on the $20 Millie Maker winner. We will talk about that because I think it's still interesting, and some just see it one way, others see it differently. I certainly still see it differently, and it's not even my bias. I'll show you when we get there. But just to note, special congrats right here. Our guy Jay Walken, he's a founding family, day one member. Got to meet him in Detroit when we were at the Fantasy Golf Live Final a couple years ago, and he played his homer defense with Detroit, which got the job done. He did have Adonai Mitchell, and it was still needed. And this was right up leverage lane, baby. Me and Alex did the show on Saturday. I left the show off. I said I like Stafford, I like Adams, I like Puka, and I like Adonai Mitchell, and you can put them all together and whatever. And again, is Mitchell the chalkiest 3K guy at 10%? Fine, but you can get away with it. You could have had even more if he got that touchdown. But people just don't see it the right way. Like if you look 2% Stafford, Adams is like 5 to 7% in most places. You could get away with a ton, but overstacking the spot and then playing a different defense like the Lions, getting a piece of that game at home with Buffalo, where they're going to put up that team total was there. Again, not everything will make the Millie Maker each week, but the $100 single entry, 217 points, phenomenal job. Shout out to Jay Walken. There was a bunch of other ones. The dude, got to give him credit. Said as it weren't for Tambo talking about them on shows with satellites and DFS Mastermind, he's got a couple 555 and 333 tickets over McLovin. Papa Gates beating out those guys, just playing the best of the best and getting the job done. This one's super loaded. GQNX, McLovin, Elusive Smoke, and Papa Gates. That's four of the best players out there and getting the job done there. $113 to $2,200 for Jacob Stubbs. $1,000 to almost $6,000 for Sharks. He said it's no Jay Walken, but very good day. And then our guy from last week, Tyler, who was on with us, he, $19 into an 11-11 midseason main event seat, two other 555 tickets, $50 to $1,000, $99 into a 1,400-ish in cash and three huge tickets. So many more were out there, but it was a huge day for Ship It Nation. Congrats again to all the winners. Nades, let's start this off as we always do and look at the perfect lineup. Puka had the ceiling game. We were saying if he can get to 40, maybe that can just drag a guy like Stafford along. And then what if he is throwing it deep to guys like Devontae Adams? And, that's the thing. The condensed target tree is more the focus than it is of the plays. Like people just look at it. We're just playing the game. This lineup is interesting because of Justice Hill, but outside of Justice Hill and 49,200, just bump him up to like whatever. I mean, even Scat fits in there with the money. $800 left. And yes, it's much less points, but this is almost 260. What was it that took down the Millie? We got it up here. I'll have it up in a second anyway, but it was 239.
took down the Millie. So it'd be close enough. But give me your thoughts on this lineup.
Yeah, overall, my first kind of thoughts are the Stafford piece, which you were very sharp with being in there from on the leverage lane, right, on Saturday morning. If you guys haven't watched that show, I highly suggest it. Very, very good talking points. Actually, spoiler alert, right? The Mahomes talk happened on that show. The Stafford talk happened on that show. If you just literally listen to that show, the Jalen Hurts stuff, which I was in on pretty heavy that you guys talked about there, was looking really good until that game just went nuts. I mean, the defensive touchdown kind of threw that crazy. But for this build here, the Stafford Puka kind of skinny stack is really nice. Not only that, because Stafford is a pivot off of all of those Caleb Williams, the Geno Smiths, all of that. But everybody wanted to play Puka. Well, if Puka goes out there at $7,900 on this slate and gets you the 35 to 40 points that you're hoping he gets to take down a tournament at that kind of ownership, why was nobody playing a pocket passing guy on the other side in Stafford, right? That was also leveraging the other quarterbacks on the slate. So that's a very sharp take there. You don't need to run it back, right? Because who are you going to run it back with, right? There's Downs, there's Pittman, there's Adonai Mitchell, there's Tyler Warren. You kind of got to guess, right? And you got to figure out where you're going there. I want to talk about the combo pack here of Amari Hampton and Quentin Johnston, how you could have got on a build like that. Quentin Johnston, well, you were already leveraging the Jacoby Myers in a build like this, right? You already were leveraging the Jacoby Myers, Trey Tucker, Brock Bowers stuff with Ashton Gentry. Well, if you're leveraging that, why not leverage that in the same tier on the same team and say Amari Hampton's getting going on the ground and Quentin Johnston's surprised? Guess what? He can catch footballs. He does score touchdowns. That is a good game environment on the slate against the Giants. In that same price point, $100 more than Jacoby Myers, Quentin Johnston right there when you're already playing Ashton Gentry. So I like that a lot. And then just plugging in the good floor plays, right? Jake London has a target floor every game. It was a good game environment there. People were in on it. Penix doubles showed up in a lot of places to win money that, hey, yeah, you might have not got all the way to the top, but you were pretty happy if you went out there and played the Penix doubles. And then the Lions defense pivot off of the Bills, right? Everybody was in on that Bills game. Bills are going to win by 70. $200 less, pivot down to the Lions defense. Shout out the title for that one. Surprise, surprise. Guess what? The Lions were pretty close to just as high of a favorite at home against Joe Flacco, who, if you have to assume, right, the Lions are going to put up, and people are talking about Amon-Ra and Gibbs and this and that, and the Lions are the real deal. Nobody wanted to play their defense. They did get some steam as people kind of moved off of the Bills and things like that. But, I mean, still sub 10% at $200 less than the Chalkies defense, one of the Chalkies defenses on the slate.
Yeah, over 90% of the field didn't play them. So that's like, again, when people are, but they steamed up to 10%, like you're lost in the sauce of this ownership game where it's like there's 90% didn't. If you go in a room and there's 10 people and 9 of them disappear, it's you and one other person. Is that the chalk? Like 9 people just left the room. That's what we're saying. 9 out of every 10 lineups did not have it. So people focus way too much on a number meaning something when it's everything else that goes with it. Another thing you pointed out slightly, and I just want to make that notion, is like a couple different things, but like $5,400 chalk Myers and then 6,200 Genty. Like some people say, like, how are these two? Like Quentin Johnston has nothing to do with Genty, but it does, because that's the move, right? If you're not playing Myers, you're thinking those points are going somewhere. If you're not on Myers and you're not on Bowers and you're thinking these points go somewhere else, then that's why Genty makes sense. And again, Genty did not get enough love versus what he could have. 16% was nothing when other guys are 40% on the slate. And again, it's 8.5, 8, round it down. 8 out of the 10 people leave the room. There's only you and 2 others. Like you're still trying to get it down to that spot where it's the name of the game is being you, the only person left in the room. Spoiler alert, the room is the top of the tournament. You want to be the one at the top. You want to be the last person standing. And that's the whole point of this, is beating out the field. There's tons of different ways you can put it together. I know Utica had a really nice lineup that we'll look at later as well. And the Millie and everywhere else won some live final seats and things like that I thought was set up quite nicely. Too many people focus on like the Justice Hill stuff. This just doesn't matter. You're going to find plays on the optimal that sneak through. But there was a lot of stuff that went with this lineup that makes sense. So let me catch up here, Nades. I got a couple other things I want to go to. We're going to be bringing Sean on after. Other notes just over at Ship It Nation, the stack rankings. The second best stack ranking was the Stafford, Nakua, Adams. You could then move pieces around it. If you like Tyler Warren, you could have fit other pieces in around that. If you're not playing Geno and the passing stack up there. Why not play Genty? We've talked about this 100 times. If you're not on Herbert and his pass attack, why not play Hampton? Starting to see the build. Like, that's literally the builds that's at the top of all your tournaments yesterday. And I'm just focused on the top 3 spots here. Debo, Warren. If you got to Pittman instead, if you're not on Flacco, maybe play the defense against it. If you want to play Henry, he did just fine. Like, a lot of what you're looking for is right up here in this top, and then you can build your lineup accordingly. So that was the other thing too. The secondary stack of a lot of people playing Nakua with Warren still was fine and turned out to be great. But what, like we said, just build on top of that foundation, right? Going back to the house analogies and the penthouse and the levels to it, that's like a nice foundation. Now, can you build up, right? Can you build up to the penthouse? And our guy Jay Walken did just that with his lineup with Stafford, Puka, Adams, Mitchell, Warren. It could have only been better if Mitchell hung on to the touchdown. Then he filled it out with guys like Hampton and Genty and whatever else was there. So just looking at it from that perspective, I think is key. And then using the stone. We don't do this enough on this show, Nades, but to talk about how good it is. We call it the best tool in DFS. It is for a reason, but this was a great thing yesterday. And again, I know some people will look at it from the perspective of like the ownership was wrong. We adjust for what we can and going into the slate and whatnot, but like it was really tricky yesterday because I don't think people saw James Cook getting to 40%. But the thing we did note on the show was this optimal on Bijan was super high. And we were saying, how can he get to 19 if we think CMC, we were using as the example, is going to move up the board quite a bit? And he did, by the way, get to like 31%. So we were closer there and everything else. But when you see James Cook stealing it all and moving up because of the savings, this just gets better, right? The optimal rate's going to stay similar, but the leverage becomes that much more because it's just going against this, right? It's going against the ownership here. So for me, that was a play that I wish I had got a lot more of late as the day went on, and just sort of looking at that slate as a whole. I thought Bijan was in a really good spot. I said on the show, if you're moving away from San Francisco, that's the one spot I could see it making sense. Like, there's no guarantee that CMC keeps it up. Now, he did do his classic 26 points. That's great. But if you wanted to get some different options and things in there, you could do it that way. But Cook came through. You go down the board. Detroit D, by the way, was right up there, and it was even more leverage because it only came in at about 9%. So if you look, they were way up there. The board, again, people complaining about the Texans chalk, they were the optimal looking defense for a reason. That's where the ownership came from. In that situation, you can keep going down. Henry had himself a good day. Who else are we trying to see here? Obviously, Hampton had one of the higher optimals. Barkley, who ended up doing okay, but just wasn't really needed. I mean, he was up there. You look at that. Igbuka, Puka, obviously popping off the page. Look for a different way to play them. But when both these guys are popping and Warren's popping on the other side, it actually was Pittman here if you could have got to him. Again, I worry a lot less about this when I'm focused on this. What I like to see is this with this 6.2, and it ended up coming in way less, like 2 to 4%, depending on where you looked. So yeah, definitely a more of a math game than picks, like our guy Richard says. Always thinking about it from that perspective, just to get a little bit different. That's something you want to do. If you guys want to check it out, go to Ship It Nation. You can go to Join the Nation right now. You can try out a week, $34 or $44, depending on what you want to get. But if you go to the $139 plan and just click it, it's already got the code built in. You'll get your first month of starter with all the additional features for $97 instead of $139. So keep that in mind as you're checking it out. Let's go to the Millie Maker, Nades, and I'll let you give first thoughts on this. Say hey 56, and I didn't even look up how many lineups they played, but we finally do see a Mahomes. 101 slates later, we get to a Mahomes Millie Maker winner, and barely, but still it got there, so we got to give it credit. What's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so they, whoever this is, congrats for the Millie. I know Twitter and X is going to go crazy slandering how disgusting this lineup is, right? But you can still pull takes from it. In terms of the lineup, he played 9 lineups and had 2 lineups with Patrick Mahomes there. So lightning strikes in a bottle once in a while, and in the tune of $1 million. So nobody can say shit about $1 million there. But I'll hit on the Patrick Mahomes. If there was a time to play Patrick Mahomes, it was this, but how you play Patrick Mahomes, right? With 9 lineups, you just say, screw it. I'm not going to take the roulette. Juju Smith, right? Let me just pull up. And I know you were talking about it and you posted it in the Discord. Congrats to your Patrick Mahomes, Hollywood Brown, Isaiah Pacheco, right? The list goes on and on. So, I mean, if you weren't going to take a guess in the roulette on Kareem Hunt, Pacheco, Worthy coming back, Hollywood Brown, Tyquan Thornton still involved in that offense, Travis Kelce, Gray, Juju Smith-Schuster. I mean, you got a million targets. We know Mahomes spreads it around. If there was a time and a way to play him, it was playing him naked, because at 6K, right, he's also, Mahomes did get some steam, but he's lower owned than guys like Geno and that are lower for a little bit more expensive there. So if you're not on the Geno stuff, right, because you're going to a Patrick Mahomes naked, plugging in Ashton Gentry there, right, and still using Rome, who looks great, heavily involved in the offense, half the ownership he was last week and the weeks before that everybody wanted to play there. You're still plugging in the good Puka play there. But the Jake Tongs play, right, you're using a value at a different position, right? You're not using Adonai Mitchell as a skinny stack who picked up all the steam at $3,100 across from Puka Nacua. You throw that $3,100 in a onesie position because you're not on Christian McCaffrey from the same team. And hey, maybe Jake Tong steals 2 touchdowns, right, from McCaffrey when you're not on McCaffrey. And when you're not on McCaffrey, well, guess what? You're leveraging the running back build with the mid-tier, Ashton Gentry, who's tied to Rome Odunze, and then Bucky Irving in that massive total game there, who nobody wanted to click, and Bucky's still just as involved. I mean, Bucky is basically the poor man's version of CMC in that Tampa Bay offense there. So overall, I think this build is really good, and I want to hit on the Woody Mark stuff. So I think this is a good combo. You could have threw Texas defense in there, which would have got you to Woody Marks as well. But I think throwing the Woody Marks play in there, $4,400. Guess who else was super chalk in that range? I get it. It's a different position, but guess what? You can play 3 running backs. You can play them in the flex. Trey Tucker came in at almost 20% in the Millie at $4,200. Well, you're not on that offense. You're saying Ashton Gentry eats everybody's lunch in that offense there. Well, Texas was the biggest favorites on the slate at home. Everybody was slamming Texas defense. Woody Marks, the snaps have gone up. All the talk was, this is the rookie. He's taking over this backfield. He's at a onesie position value guy, right? You didn't need Woody Marks to ship yesterday, but it was a process of results. You weren't going in there and starting your build saying, I'm going to play $4,400 Woody Marks, right? But when you start filling things out, you could have moved Bucky Irving up here and played Trey Tucker in the flex, and he went to win the Millie, right? So little things like that, and it's a process of results, and then double pivoting up to the Detroit defense as a chalk, right? As a pivot off the Houston defense there, because you're playing Puka, you're playing London, you're playing these guys that are higher owned. So overall, you can pull a lot from this build, and a lot of people look at this build and say it's terrible, and I think there is actually some stuff you can pull here, and it does seem like a hand build, because with only 9 lineups, I'm assuming it seems like a hand build portfolio.
Yeah, a lot of people say like it's a time traveler and all these different things, but like I have a lot less bad to say about this lineup than some of the other ones in the past. It was it could have been it actually ended up being a much higher scoring slate than we thought it might be. So the way some of those afternoon games went, even watching the morning was like people were saying, man, it is a low scoring slate, but the afternoon kind of went nuts, and that's where the best games were. So that's fine. But of note, and we'll pull this up in a second for you, David. We appreciate you. This was all I was saying is like, if you really think that it's just Mahomes and he's going to spread it out, then fine. But like just a prime example, he would have had even more points if he just pairs up Puka for a ceiling score with Stafford at 59. Like you'd still have more points. So it wasn't that Mahomes can't get there. It's you need a very particular set of things to happen for this type of lineup to get there. And I said, I'm fine if people want to keep playing it. I'm the first to give credit. And when people are talking shit about a guy saying, oh, what a loser building that lineup, like he has $1 million. He did build the best lineup. There's actually a lot of things that do make sense. Genty across from Odunze, the best chalk play on the slate. Nacua, London just as a plug and play. Tongs when you're not going to CMC. Bucky Irving as a piece of that game. Like Detroit, all of it you can make a case for, and he spread it out across the board. So I got no problem with that. Looking for ceiling scores on some of these outcomes. The Woody Marks thing, who's not popular, but when you're playing down, that's how we got to the joke on the show yesterday. We actually pegged we said Woody Marks the spot for our 2-touchdown guy, and he ended up getting 2 touchdowns. People had the tickets in the Discord, so it was kind of funny. But it was like, if the Texans are going to be the chalk D, it's the reverse of the Jones situation last week. Anybody who saw us last week say Jones is going to be popular, you can cut into the defense with Minnesota at like no ownership. In this case, the defense was going to be popular, if they're really going to be up and laying it to them and stomping them out, and in this case, even a shutout, who no one knew that was going to happen. But I mean, if you're picking on Tennessee, you could see chances for Marks to get in there. You could see what it's been like with Chubb. Title had a great call on it yesterday too. He said, he wish he knew more of the situation, but he expects Marks to take over sooner than later. Obviously, still a split, but just take on more share than Chubb, who's, ever since the injury, the unfortunate injury to him, has come back not as strong. So the Woody Marks thing made sense from that perspective. Tongs made sense for no CMC, etc. But I do think just the Mahomes factor is like it is Stafford, Mahomes, and another, like, where's some other Mahomes lineups? Like, at least this had Worthy in it. I was going to show that, right? You got to get there with some sneakier plays like the Judkins or the Strange in that. But for the most part, this lineup could have easily just had the $100 less, leave $100 on the table, make a ton of sense, and move it around. But overall, congrats to Say Hey 56. Let's bring up David's question. It says, how often in GPPs do you feel that a naked quarterback will win? Do you think it should be used more often? I don't. I think I'm just going to continue. Like, that's what I was trying to say. So I'm not, like I said yesterday in the Discord, I'm the first to defend someone like Say Hey 56 in this spot and say, I don't care what anybody says about how shitty or over leveraged or whatever their lineup might be. They built the best lineup and they won $1 million. It doesn't mean it's built the best, but they built the lineup that was needed to win the $1 million yesterday. And honestly, this one had a lot more that made sense to it than some others that we've seen in the past. But again, this becomes, I think, David, a situation with the latter part of your question of where people see something and then naturally want to run to it. Like, oh, I saw naked quarterback wins. Now I'm going to do that more often in my lineups. Or I saw this. Now I'm going to do that. It's only really in certain circumstances where you see that stuff, but a lot of the concepts don't move to something like that. It's not where it's like, oh, a single quarter, let's do all naked quarterbacks now. You don't see it very often. We review these every week for literal years now, and you just don't see this very often. I will also say in all those review shows, Nades, even the one last year that was Jordan Love in the same spot, it was the same thing. The quarterback, it was Baker Mayfield, was $100 less, and the lineup had like $3 and $2 from the other side, and then they didn't use the quarterback in the game. I don't see that happening very often. So I don't think it's necessary. I would not be looking to build for that. But again, to each their own. If it's a portion of your portfolio, someone building 9 lineups looking like it's by hand, it makes sense. Not for me. What about you?
Yeah, no, I think, again, I look at this as a parlay, right? I mean, there's a reason sports books give you way, quote unquote, bigger odds, but way worse odds, right? When you're doing a 8-team, a 9-team, a 10-leg parlay, right? Well, you look at DFS the same way, right? I mean, you got 9 roster spots to fill out. A naked quarterback, yeah, you got 8 other roster spots to fill out if you run a naked quarterback. Well, guess what? You can skinny stack, you can double stack, you can overstack. And if you're saying that he's going to hit his ceiling performance, there's chances are that the game's going to be high scoring. There's likely to be other pieces to come with it, right? So that's kind of the way I'm going to continue building, is correlating. I know naked quarterbacks, this or that. The only time I really give it consideration is if it's like a $4,000 quarterback and you have no idea, right? Because they're getting thrusted into the office and they have rushing upside, like a Mariota last week. Like you can Jackson Dart this week, right? You didn't really know what the offense is going to look like with a guy like that has a rushing floor. That's really the only time I kind of consider it. If it's a basically stone minimum quarterback or a super cheap quarterback with rushing upside, that you have no idea, right? It's kind of the first time we're seeing him, and we don't know what his target tree is going to look like.
Agreed. And I want to talk about another concept. I'm going to get our guy Sean the link. We'll bring him in the next 5 minutes or so and go through some stuff with his stuff and just with his experience at Ship It Nation, DFS Mastermind, everything that we've been involved with. But I will, while we're waiting on him, go through Utah's lineup here. And this, you'll see, it's like, oh, it's 11th in the Millie, et cetera, et cetera. But he won a bunch of other stuff with it, like some live final seats and things like that. So 226.02. We'll get to it in a second. Before I go to that, though, just a note on what you were talking about, and just in general, it's kind of like flips it the other way. One thing I will notice, and you'll see it here when we get to Utah's lineup in a minute, is I've talked about this for years, but just to reiterate it, is like our guy Jay Watkins, in the $100 single entry, it's a smaller field. The overstack, it can still work. We saw our guy Hoop win the Millie with an overstack before. I'm saying that, like, it's still in the Millie. What the thing about overstacks is, a lot of the times you really need the game to just go nuclear. And remember, on an 11 game or a bigger slate, sometimes there's like the one bad egg that doesn't get you there. The Adonai Mitchell, who's like fine for 3,100, but 11 points usually isn't going to cut it in a Millie Maker win, right? The lowest on this is 14.8, and it's Jake Tongs, who's like a $3,100 tight end 0.5%er. So, Rome was a letdown and still put up 17. So just keeping that stuff in mind, you are seeing, like when we get to Utah's lineup here in a minute, where in a larger field, more things can free flow and get there still because, Hunter Henry hurts him at 11, but at least that's at a tight end onesie position. He's still got the 37, the 39, the 28, the 24 from 5,500, etc., all in there. So I think that's something important to remember, not to mention, and we'll get to it now, is Pitts could have been in the tight end here, but it's fine to play a double tight end lineup. I really like this lineup a lot, and I'm sure just Optimizer spits it out, but just to note it, there was ways that this lineup could have got better if, it's easy when it's results oriented after the fact. I'm just saying if you put Pitts in there, there's obviously swaps and things that you can make happen to adjust the lineup. Like McCaffrey can go down to James Cook for 1,400 less, still have 1 point less. Pitts can go up and you'd have 5,400 or whatever it is to spend on something, right? Whether it's it would have worked or not, probably not, because it'd be like Jacoby Myers or Pearsall. But just to note, you could have found another alternative to get there. So little things like that I think are interesting. But this lineup, Nades, was Penix, London, Pitts. There was no run back, did not need to go to Debo or anybody on the other side to try and figure out that Washington situation. No different, by the way, than the previous week of the game against Washington with Las Vegas. It was Gino, our guy shoved our guy Sheets. It was Gino, it was Tucker, it was Myers and Bowers. Whether Bowers came through or not, that's kind of the point. Also, could have went the exact same route here almost, because he could have played Bijan for $300 less and had 30 points or whatever he ended up putting up and got a little bit further up the board, but still, that's the setup. Genty with nobody else from that side. CMC, Puka. So like three of the better plays, Genty being the one you're not on those other guys. Like he had the Quentin Johnston Genty thing figured out. And again, if you're not on Hampton and you're not on Myers, another combination of that would have been to go to Johnston. And then where are those points coming from? If not Myers and Bowers or Tucker, let's go to Genty at 13% at 6,200. Henry is a piece of that game. People did like May. So if you want to go to Henry, that's fine. And then Detroit with the defense at home. Again, no Buffalo piece needed in this. Went with Detroit with 27-point team total instead to get the job done for him. But obviously McCaffrey could have been $7,100 Cook, only been a point less, and had 1,400 to spread across the lineup. Give us your thoughts on this one from Utica.
Yeah, I think this is a really, really good build, and I can take it even. I agree with everything what you said, but also Penix, London, Pitts is 14-4. Guess what was 15K flat was Geno Smith, Jacoby Myers, Trey Tucker, right? Well, you're not in on that game. You get extra $600 to work with. Plug in Ashton Gentry, which is a payoff off of the spend up or the spend down running back, right? The Scatterbows and the Hamptons of the world. Plug in a Quentin Johnston, right, who's also leveraging that whole tier of the Jacoby Myers stuff that we talked about earlier, right? So you're kind of double, triple. I mean, you talk about the levels, right? Well, level step A, right? Okay, well, there's levels to this, and there's so many levels in here that the average person would look at this build. And obviously, Yuta, right, runs an MME set and runs his whatever optimizer, whatever projections, all that he uses, right, in his process. But this stuff is all built into his process, to his calculator, right? He's not just going in and clicking a button and saying, well, what it gives me, this is what it's telling me to do. All of this kind of stuff and back testing is all built into a process here. So taking it that extra level, right, that $600 pivot off of the chalkiest game on the slate that everyone wants to go to, and double leveraging it that with a Quentin Johnston and Ashton Gentry play with that extra money that you have makes a ton of sense there. And then just plugging in good plays that projected well around it, because you're already off the board, right? You got a 2% owned Michael Penix and a 6% owned Kyle Pitts, sub 10% owned Detroit defense. So I did want to call it that point, right?
Yeah, no, it's all good stuff. And I think that's the key to remember, is just like I said, but you notice this is not that, it's really back to the parlay thought, because I talk about it a ton. I've brought up a million times. It's like, the way Sheets had it last week, it worked out that it was like a 4-game parlay. It just built out 4 things need to go your way. And if they do, that's great. But you can see it in these larger fields where like some of those one-offs, if you're one-offs to like no secondaries and really become an extra bet, when your extra bets become Christian McCaffrey, Puka Nacua, Detroit defense at home against Flacco, I wouldn't say those are underdogs. Those are literally some of the best favorites on the slate. So again, you're getting the theme of the betting is, if you're going to extend your card, in the example of comparing DFS to a parlay in the sense of just the general concept. When you extend it out, the favorites are what are, you're setting it up off of the basis of, okay, I want these two guys. I like this defense and they're lower owned. It all cuts into each other. Now what else makes sense? Well, I'm not on the Chicago LV spot. Let's get the running back that would make that happen and go my way. I'm not on Bijan this week, but I think this game could go back and forth. And if Penix is going to be a tight target tree like the Stafford, Nakua, Adams type of stuff, it would be London and Pitts and maybe Mooney in some of those builds, but you're really 2 or 3 with Penix and probably looking to jump Bijan, but some might play him with Bijan. So just little things like that you want to know. If you guys have more questions, by all means, throw them in there. I'm going to pull up our guy Sean's lineup and bring him in. So let me get this adjusted. Sean, the man, there he is. I love it. Rocking the hoodie. What's going on, man? How are you?
What's up? I'm glad to be here.
I appreciate having you on, man. And I know you've been a member at Ship It Nation for quite some time. You've been a part of sort of everything we've been doing from the ground up and, over on the mastermind side and, getting involved. You had a big 50K score that we praised last year in the NBA streets. And now you got a lot of other stuff going on. But this was a nice build from you yesterday, man. So welcome in. Tell the people a little bit about yourself and sort of your experience with the whole Ship It Nation umbrella. And then we'll talk about a couple of your lineups. And I think we've got some good concepts to go over that we can bring up.
Yeah, so I started DFS about like 4 years ago-ish when I was back in college, and it was like post-COVID. I was mainly only like a NBA DFS kind of person because I love NBA. I've been watching NBA with my brothers since I was before I could, walk basically. NBA's been a big thing for me. It got that big 50K score as well. But I was mainly finding cores of people and tailing the cores, and then I found Stochastic on YouTube, and then I ended up finding you guys on YouTube as well, and I kind of fell in love with it because you guys talked about DFS in a different way than a lot of other shows did as well. So jumped in right around when you guys started up the company, and been a part of this community ever since. So
yeah, very valued member. Everybody loves Sean, and he's always in there in all the different Discords and chats. And we kind of have a real community feel. We talk about it a ton, and everybody does. I get it, but I do feel like it's something that we can definitely say truthfully. It is a real family, a real community in there. People we know the inside jokes about each other. It's never scary if you're joining the community to be able to hop into a conversation. You're not going to get crushed or shoot away. It's like we're all in there trying to learn, trying to get better, and focus on our game. You've done it and been able to, like you said, have even a 50K score that many would love to put on their roster, on their resume, I should say. But let's talk a little bit about yesterday. You were in there. We were talking some stuff we were talking Geno Smith to Genty. We were talking about these Stafford stacks. And I don't think your day was going great until it was. And I know it didn't finish how you would love, but this is still a really nice lineup, man, and a great build. So I'm going to try and zoom it a little bit, and maybe you can just frame it up for people. It was what tournament was it in? We see that it came 47th, but in the spirit of zooming it, I'm going to cut that off. It was 47th for $150, had 204 points with Stafford at the helm down to the Patriots there. Talk us through this one. Take us through the thought process here and how you got to this.
Yeah, so this was in the $12 single entry. I usually play in the $5, but I've been upping that to more of a smaller field. This is the big $12. Yeah. And I honestly thought that I was dead at halftime. I was looking at the score of the Colts game. I was like, this is over. I'm not even going to make cash. It's going to be a horrible me being on the show. Duke can't even win kind of thing. So I'm glad Stafford came through in the end. But so this was the Stafford Adams Nakua was right from the stack rankings. That is like one of the first things I check when I build lineups every week. Even in MLB is the stack rankings. It was Stafford, Nakua, Adams, if you sort by value.
Yep.
I really wanted to have some kind of piece of the Giants Hampton and Giants Cardinals game. So I went with Hampton Scattaboo based off your guys' talk in the leverage lane show. Unfortunately, Scattaboo did not get in the box. I think he had so many chances of getting in the box and he just didn't do it. Genty, I was really, really high on Genty in 20 max. And I was like, if I'm not playing the Geno passing stack, I might as well go with Genty as well. And then pairing up Henry and the Patriots D. I like to pair up a defense with a player I already have. It's just something I like to do anyways, to have just a little bit of extra correlation.
Yeah, and you said you use the stack rankings. I'm sure like everybody, the best part about our tools and the way people look at them, like when you think about all these things we have, DVP rankings will come out eventually. I know some people love those. I typically have my best weeks in NFL DFS over my whole career are after weeks 6 to 8 in that range, and then it starts to pick up. We do have more information. We can start to see it a little more clear. Pricing tightens up, which I also think helped this past week when it's so loose in the beginning. There's just every lineup can be built good, look good, feel good, but doesn't mean it will actually do good. But the stone, everybody reads it differently. But we talk about this all the time, Sean, and you said it there. But like you went right to the stack rankings. I have it sorted by value. There's those three. If you're not on Geno, let's get Genty in there. We already liked him anyway, but there's going to be a possibility we can move to that. If we're not on Herbert, let's get the Hampton play in there. And not far down the board was the Giants. So it's like if you're not going to be on that passing attack, why not have Scat on the other side? And like you said, he had a million chances, just didn't get in there. And that's fine. That's still pretty good, sets up well. Then you say, okay, where's Hunter Henry? Oh, he's right there as well. And if I'm going to play the defense against somebody, why not a team that's way down the board on these stack rankings? And again, not saying you saw it particularly this way, but you did mention it, of using it. That's kind of the setup. And even, I think, if we go back for 2 seconds, Pittman, he's not there, but it's just of note. It's kind of who you can fit based on your roster construction. Indy was up there as well. So I just don't think people do this enough and realize that we're not saying stack, like I'll use a most common example because it doesn't exist right now, by the way, a 2-gamer later tonight. Hoop, myself, Title will be back breaking down the 2-gamer. It's Jake Browning with Chase and Higgins, but I always used to use this one, like Burrow, Chase, and Higgins, putting those three together. That's not really a stack ranking. Like, yeah, that's a good stack. We know it, but everybody knows it and you got to pay for it. We're looking by value, which is based on our projections, using salary and point combinations to find you what makes the most sense. Because if you're looking for a cheaper stack for your stack rankings that you need to find for your single entry or something, you can say, okay, I'm sorting them by salary and then good value, or by value and then finding the lower salary. If I've got money to spend and I'm fine with the 20K, let's do it. But it really can help you guide yourself through it. And Nadesify have showed pretty much every week for the last 2 years, if you just go like the top 10 spots here and then make sense of it, you can definitely get to some good lineups. So anything else you want to add there, Sean? If not, I'll let Nades chime in, but I think the build is super sound across the board. Maybe was there any thought around like the Buffalo or the Detroit big team totals? Like, do you fear leaving those off? How do you look at your process as a whole when you're thinking about it from that perspective? Because this is your single entry, like you said.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention the Pittman thing. The Pittman, that was an actual decision that I made. I listened to a lot of content, especially like after work on Friday and Saturday, like all day Saturday, I'm listening to content. And I heard Adonai Mitchell's name all the time. And I was like, man, this guy's really going to get some steam. And I thought the connection that Daniel Jones has with Pittman is real. So I wanted a good amount of Pittman in my lineup. So that was the decision. I went there to pivot off of the chalky Tyler Warren, to pivot off of the steam that I thought Adonai Mitchell was going to get as well. And your point on like fading big team totals, I don't know. It's hard to stack up Josh Allen. I feel like in the offense that he has so many weapons. Sometimes it's a James Cook 3-touchdown kind of game. And I feel the same way about Jared Goff as well. Goff was, I was getting a good amount of him in 20 max, so I was fine fading, like going underweight or fading him in single entry or the 3 max stuff that I do as well.
Appreciate the breakdown, man. I really love that. And Nades, I'll kick to you in just 1 sec. I do want to add something though that I think is important for people to know as well, because in like the larger field stuff yesterday, Mitchell got to like 8 to 10%. And Pittman came in around 9%. But I think people confuse that. And Sean just did a good example of explaining it. But like, when people look at it, it's like Mitchell had nobody else around him getting ownership at all. So that's why like chalk has to be taken in. Like I said, while there is 90 people not playing him for every 100, he's saying in his builds, if he's not going to have, guess who is chalk in that range? Like Myers at 5,400. Like a lot of the guys around that 5K range had a lot more ownership than Pittman. And the chalkiest of, well, there's only 9 out of every 10 that one out of every 10 that are playing him of the 3K range. It changes your build type as well. So I like that Pittman call and the way he sort of fit your build and you moved it around him, and that still allowed you to get everything you wanted in one build while not fearing moving off of guys like James Cook or anything to do with the Detroit side or CMC or any of that. Nades, do you have any thoughts on everything Sean just said and he went through?
Yeah, no, first, congrats, Sean. I know you're always in the Discord. You're always learning. You're always asking good questions. And we appreciate that for sure. And I know you dabble in every sport. I know MLB, you've had some good sweats and NBA, things like that. So congrats. But not only that, I want to take the Pittman an extra level too. While you're not on Adonai Mitchell, you're not on Tyler Warren, but guess who's also $5,100 at a wide receiver play who you easily could have just plugged in there projections wise? Chris Olave, right? One of the most popular wide receivers on the entire slate. Well, why not plug in a guy who's leveraging on the exact same team for the Colts off of the Warren, off of the Adonai Mitchell? That makes sense for the build, right? When you didn't need to run it back, right? We saw how many Millie Maker winners that don't have bringbacks, right? Because there's that's a whole nother ball game, right? Where you can talk and a whole nother discussion on bringbacks or not bringbacks, this or that. But a lot of projections would have probably put in Chris Olave there because Chris Olave projected a lot better, right? You already had the double stack. It's not saying you need to bring it back there. It's just a product of how we build and having to get less things right. And Chris Olave would have cost you more money. It would have cost you more money in terms of winnings there. So I didn't want to bring up that point, but the rest of the build, very, very sound, very good build, and a lot of the leverage plays built in. And people are like, oh, well, he scored 204 points and only won this. I mean, you beat 19,000 people in that single entry, right? It's the main $12 single entry, and you're still staying within your means. It's still a great score for you. It's a bankroll builder for you, right? So it doesn't matter about stakes or that. It's about how you build lineups and the process. And that's what the point of the show is trying to teach that process, right? It's not picks or plays. It's not who's Tambo on. It's not who's Nades on. It's not who this guy is on, right? There's a million hours of content. You could literally watch content from Wednesday to Sunday morning and literally not have any time for anything else. There's so much content out there. It's not about that. You could listen to all the content in the world and still not build winning lineups because you don't have a good process, right? And you're not thinking about this in the proper way. It's the whole thing Tambo says, right? Information overload or paralysis by analysis, right? Trying to pick everything. And when you have tools like Ship Nation has, right, with the stack rankings, with the stone to get target games, to get that, I mean, you can take the names off it and use the color coding and the optimal rates and the salaries and build lineups.
And one thing I'll say too, and I know Sean was trying to dip because he's so worried about the next lineup we're going to pull up and a little bit of criticism and fun stuff back and forth. I'm teasing you, but I will say too, it's like, again, you know, he's usually playing $5 single entry, he said, and has now gone up to the $12. You have to take the process itself is key of you got to 204. We're not all playing in the 5K buy-ins and whatnot, but that 204 would have played very well in a lot of higher stakes stuff yesterday. And obviously most people that are doing what Sean's doing, grinding, working on the game, trying to get better, perfecting a process, something you can make repeatable, using tools to make it happen. That's where it's setting up, Sean, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like that's where it's setting up to say it's about the score you put up. Did you want to win all the money? Absolutely. You played to win and you did. The lineup shows that. You didn't win this time, but you got to take away the positives of it. Like, yeah, you play in the 5, you went up to the 12. If this was in the 100, it would have made even more money, but it's like you don't play the 100, so you can't be worried about that right now. You're grinding towards that, but you got to take away the positives of the process. And I would say, the progress is the process. Like if you're seeing progress, that means you're getting your process down. That means you're getting something that's more repeatable. Progress means it's happening and it's moving towards something. So I don't know, man, correct me if I'm wrong on any of that stuff, but that's how I see this as people are trying to come in and get better at DFS. He might be frozen.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think a lot of people, will compare how a lineup did in, a different contest. And I used to be like that, and I've just stopped. I've, worried about, I could have won X amount of money there, but I need to be focused on building up my bankroll and focused on the contest that I'm in and stuff like that. So I think what you hit on was correct.
Yeah, I use it all the time. I use, golf, professional golf. I use like one of my main analogies for whatever reason. I use a lot of stuff, chess and chefs and gyms and trainers and you name it. But like the golf one, to me, it's like if somebody wins a tournament, they're not like, man, I played good enough today that I should have won the Masters. Like you're not playing the Masters. You're playing in this tournament. Be happy you did well in this tournament and it's progress. And now you move towards maybe getting to play in the Masters and then you could go to the Masters and suck. That's golf. That's like DFS. You could play good enough, win a 44-44 ticket, play it and come DFL, dead last. You're just the worst team that week, that slate. But the progress is what got you there. If you're not usually playing, and you saw it earlier, we had Tyler on last week in the Sean spot where we're having members come on and go through some of their successes and even the stuff that they go through, their process. But he was on last week, comes out this past week and ends up winning like 3 big tickets. Now he's going to be in the 11-11 midseason event off $19. He's going to be in the 555 Millie this week a couple times. Maybe he ships the Millie, and it's like this story he told last week to he could win the Millie next week. Like, that's how quick it can turn around. The progress, part of the process. So love to see it, Sean. Let's bring up this other build, and I'll kick it to you on this one, Sean. And there's nothing really wrong with it actually at all. It's kind of funny. There was a back and forth in the Discord yesterday. Long story short, it was Sean got a little, he had said that Gino and Genty don't really correlate well for him. And so he wasn't going to roll with that. Of course, the Discord comes back, Wardo, and the like I said, it's like a family in there. People just say, hey, what about this? And Sean took it all in good stride, said, hey, I was wrong on this one. It happens. But he had said, I got a Jalen Hurts Barkley lineup. And I had questioned it to say, I wonder, like, again, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I definitely have seen it before posted that because of tush push, but also because we play a salary-based game where for these two to both ceiling out would be a hard thing in some of these tournaments. So, Sean, I'll kick it to you. This is your lineup. It's Hurts, Barkley, Goddard. He did have a big check down to him later in the game where he almost took it to the house. So, I mean, it could just as easily have gone that way as well. You still got Genty, Nakua, Odunze. You had to move off your Pittman stuff for Downs, and then Tucker in the flex. Rams D is a little bit cheaper, but I really, against Downs, there was other things you could have done here that wouldn't even make it that bad. But just give us your thoughts on this build.
Yeah, and shout out to Wardo. It takes a lot for me to admit I was wrong to him specifically, just because of the connection I have with him.
NBA streets, man. He's a big Knicks fan too. Did we lose Sean? Oh, there he is. You're back.
Sorry about that. But anyways, I've been experimenting with trying to pair pass catching running backs with quarterbacks as well. So that's what I was trying to do here with Saquon and Jalen Hurts. And it kind of flipped the build of people were tending to pay down at quarterback to the Mariotas, the Darts, the Staffords, stuff like that. And it was funny. In this lineup, I was trying to late swap to get Christian McCaffrey in, and it was forcing me to like get off Nakua. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. Nakua was the best play in my mind yesterday. Mm-hmm. So I really wanted Nakua in there. So I just rolled with what it was. Ended up getting late swapping to Rome as well. And glad he got in the box, but
yeah, I can see what happened is you still put some correlation into it. Like you had some stuff that made sense. If you're not on this, that, like you put those 3 guys, you put 3 guys from the Chicago LV game, and then you kind of just ended up with 3 guys from the Rams Indy game. And like, it's not like Downs can't get there while Rams go off, but obviously in a larger field, 11 game slate, maybe not necessarily needed, but it's by all means, it can get there. So that's fine. It's a personal decision when people turn that off on these slates or leave it on for playing defense against a skill position. But still, the thing is like, it just depends on the build. But like I said, my biggest thing is with the tush push, the pricing. That's where it's more about, can Jalen Hurts and him both get 2 touchdowns? Absolutely. It's what does it do to the build? And then also, will that be enough? Because in the same token, even if you had have added more to both of those guys, it still gets outdone by like Penix Bijan or depending on what Gino and Genty, because Genty alone has the 32, like Gino didn't really come through, but just to note it's to me always way more of a price factor. There is a ton of situations, and I think it's awesome that you're thinking that way, because there is a ton of situations where people just naturally avoid the quarterback with the running back. But like even yesterday I was talking about, didn't work out, but I was saying like, I'll put Herbert with Hampton, with QJ, with whatever, if it works together. Because if I'm expecting the game to go off, that can easily happen. So I just think that's the little things that are important. You got a couple nice flip passes to Dallas Goedert here, but that could be the thing too, right? Like, again, not that you wanted him in this lineup or needed him, but like if you ended up going to Bijan instead of Barkley here, you're not getting there still, but it's like you could have still had just Hurts with his tight end. You got to fill out a onesie position. He's cheap at tight end. You still can build around that type of stuff. Nades, did you have further thoughts on? I mean, I don't think the lineup punted anything off too crazy. outside of like the trio pack at the bottom, but like obviously Goddard's paired, so I don't even care about that one. Downs is a guy with no Pierce. So again, it's really hard to poke holes in it, but it's just more the general concept of two guys that expensive that also can sort of eat each other's lunch when it comes to the goal line stuff.
Yeah, no. So I do have a couple thoughts here. I don't think the lineup is that bad. I think it's bad with the team that you chose, because when you're grabbing Hurts, Barkley, and Goddard, well, yeah, that's great, because guess what? You're just saying that they soak up all the red zone, right? There's definitely teams where you can do that. The issue comes in is the salaries, right, of Hurts, the salary of Barkley and Goddard together, right? If it was a cheaper stack, I'd have no problem doing that, just because it would give you better flexibility for the rest of your roster. You kind of got tunnel vision into what it left you, right, with the games that you still wanted to target, just due to the salary constraints there. But I don't hate the idea of going the red zone, right? Saying a tight end at a onesie position, pairing the running back and the quarterback together. I mean, Tambo, I've done it a ton with, but it's cheaper stacks, right? And it's less prohibitive for the roster. But not only that, the opportunity cost that you're giving up at the running back position when you're also doing that, right, of guys like Jahmyr Gibbs, right, Christian McCaffrey, right, all those spend up other guys that everybody want to play, and it kind of sacrifices you off of those really good plays in the mid-tier of the running back position. But overall, outside of that, I think the build is good, right? You're still correlating. You're needing less things to go your way when they go your way to get to the top.
Yeah, I love that call. And I will bring up Go Collect. Kyle's awesome. Another guy in the community, super sharp mind, getting better all the time. And said, me personally, if I ever play Hurts and Barkley, this is a great point as well. Like I said, and that's where I think, Sean, you were thinking as well, and you're experimenting with it, and it all makes sense. And even like Goddard is like a slice and dice on those guys, kind of. Well, they're not super high owned. It's more of he at least makes it more affordable by adding that third piece. But if we did have a game where Hurts and Barkley get 2 touchdowns each to pay that off, which is kind of like what you'd think would happen some way, shape, or form, you'd think there would definitely be a nice enough back and forth and less of that sort of blowout effect or anything like that. And it's not that that's what this was, but just to note it, like that would make sense for the build, because that would force them to go off. If they're going to get 30 plus each, you got to think there's something on the other side sort of pushing that. So Egbuka, Godwin coming back, whatever, Bucky, if you liked him, like any of that stuff could make a ton of sense as a way to get in on a game stack that's different. So love that call out. And again, nothing wrong with the build, just good conversation. And I love that you're always open to that and kind of having some fun going back and forth with it. Wardo, like you say, got the bestie on the Genti and Gino stuff this time, but hey, it didn't show up on any Millie Makers, Wardo, so it's not like it was needed either, right? So give him the gears back. A couple things.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah, hop in.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, this was actually, and I know you always have the statement of your inputs are your outputs for Saber, but this was a lineup that Saber gave me, and I was looking at it because I always look at all, especially for 20 max, all the lineups that Saber gives me, and I was thinking about a run back, and I was like, I mean, there is a possibility that the Eagles just roll Tampa Bay here. Like the Eagles' offense is elite, and their defense is getting better as the season goes on. And they were rolling for a while until Tampa came back in the fourth quarter. So I understand the run back point. So like all the lineups that Saber gave me with Hurts quarterback had Saquon with them too, which was interesting as well. So
yeah, different style of build for the slate. Again, I'm never gonna go against everything, but like I will say, like I talk about this a ton of times, is like if I'm making go back to one of my chef ones, if I'm making a recipe, I don't have to follow the exact recipe that's given to me. I'm allowed to just spice it up a little more, or people have their little secret spice, secret sauce, extra hot sauce, whatever it is that changes it a little bit. I'm still going to put a spin on things. And I think that's what, even Sheets has talked about in the past, and some of the best DFS players in the world, that it's like, it's putting those blends together of a little bit of like, I know DFS, I know ball, mixed with a tool as powerful as SaberSim. I use the Ferrari example all the time. To me, SaberSim, it's a Ferrari. There's two, you can give a Ferrari to 2 different people. One hits the wall immediately with it and crashes out. The other person flies around the block and knows exactly what's going on and eventually becomes a top tier driver with it. It's powerful. They both have the same tool and ability, but the expertise and the experience and that stuff comes in. So it's always good to talk about it. Always good to think about it, but love that you're putting that stuff together. And overall, man, just amazing stuff. Appreciate you. Definitely want to hit on that. That's one that Sean brought up. I'm going to go there. I just want to handle this one quickly because Kenny was first. Said, I love using stack rankings in the stone to build. Is there any way to get stack rankings in college football? Yeah, there definitely is a way, and I love the feedback. Certainly appreciate it. The one thing about college football, moves a lot faster than the NFL, like on the fly, very quickly. We will be able to automate it and make something like that maybe for the future, but I wouldn't want to make any promises right now until we feel good about that setup, because obviously when the last minute stuff changes, it's not that difficult because we're just making a change in our projections, which can then link to the table for the stack rankings. But it's a process that we would have to get to, Kenny. So really appreciate you bringing up that feedback. And then we'll end on this one. Sean Rooney, it's the Sean show today. Sean says, can y'all extrapolate on Genty play? He's been cheeks. Was it a product of him having to bounce back? Again, this is all to do with the number one thing, and why I love landing on this question to round it out. It had nothing to do with Genty as a player. I know you'll hear all around the industry about his O-line and the opportunities and the takes and the data and you name it. This would literally not matter to me at all. It's all just a product of it. It's not the play, it's the process. If you weren't landing on Jacoby Myers or Geno stuff or that, but you felt as though the Vegas squad was going to be needed or be involved, we showed you the example earlier. Like a lot of the best lineups had Quentin Johnston and Genty. They didn't have some magic ball that said they knew that was the play. There's really no correlation to them in football terms, in the plays terms, because one is a player on the Chargers in a completely different game than Genty is a running back in a completely different game. But they have huge implications in DFS in that QJ is 5,500 and unowned versus Jacoby Myers at 5,400. If you're not going there and you're not on, it's a quick flip of like Hampton and him, not the exact dollar for dollar, but Hampton and Myers, extremely popular combo. You can move to Genty and Quentin Johnston and find the $300. There's always somewhere to find $300. But like I said, these are the takes you're going to get. But the first part, the former, about Chicago has been getting I literally don't care. Like you could be a slip. They could have been the best team in the world against running backs. And it's one slip, one shoelace tackle that gets missed, whatever it is. And the guy's off to the races for a 70-yard touchdown. It's not about the result and the performance. He still got to 20% in some places. Like a lot of people catch on to this, but people think he got to 20% because of his opportunity or his matchup. It has everything to do with people getting better at DFS and recognizing that that's leverage. When you look at 40% owned Cook and 40% owned Hampton and 31 to 35% owned CMC, et cetera, et cetera. Nades, you got anything you want to add with that? You usually do a pretty good job breaking this stuff down as well.
Yeah. So the thing about the running back is, well, you can only play 3 on the slate. Not everybody's going to be the 40% owned, right? You knew Hampton, and this is a late game, right? So it could have been a late state swap for a lot of, but not only that, I mean, you look at the Raiders, 23-point team total at home in a 1.5 point spread. Everybody wants to play the passing game on both sides, right? The Caleb, the Rome, the DJ Moore, Cole Kmet with no Loveland, right? With the news there, the Geno, the Jacoby, the Trey Tucker, the Brock Bowers. Well, guess what? Guess who nobody wanted to click? Ashton Gentry. Well, guess what? He's been getting 15 plus touches every single game, all of that. And it leverages the entire common build that you're going up against in one of the most popular games. So how can you play? Oh, well, you just played the chalkiest game on the slate. Well, guess what? You played it completely different than everybody else who played the chalky game played it. So that's the taking it to the next level, taking it and looking for little pieces like this, right? I didn't care. You could have put Hoop, right? You could have put Hoop's name right there. I would have still played that in spots where it made sense for my roster because of what it did for the overall build and the leverage that it had on other rosters that you're going up against.
Yeah, and I'll let Sean have the final thoughts, but just to note before I bring him back in, can't say thank you enough again, Sean, just for hopping on and doing this with us. But the last thing is, you made a really good point there, Nades, is the late swap. Like Tucker and Genty got to much higher than I think they were going to be. People that know to late swap could not sit on Geno and Myers and Bowers and the most popular options. There was a lot of ways to get from Bowers and Myers to Genty. I know it's a little bit more money, and people, well, they didn't have the money. They didn't just have one guy left in all those lineups. There's a lot of swaps that can be made. So they had opportunity, late swap opportunity, like I like to say it. So I definitely think that's the key. And Sean, I was going to end on this anyway, but Kenny says, do you review lineups if I send it via DM? Feel like I've learned so much already this year. Just want to see if I was overthinking or not, or just lucked out. But you are over at DFS Mastermind, and we most certainly have a lineup reviews channel in there. I don't spend enough time talking about it right now because we're in the heart of the NFL season. And I think anybody signing up for anything should definitely be starting with Ship It Nation. You need to get your own process. You need to get in a Discord that's much bigger. DFS Mastermind is kind of an offset of that, where we have a smaller group of a lot of the community in there, but you can check it out. You go to shipitnation.com, you can click on Mastermind. It will open it up and let you go through and see everything that is offered, but there's a ton different more, right? There's a monthly Q&A. We got the next one coming up Wednesday night this week at 7 p.m. Eastern. You've got all the exclusive interviews. You've got the private Discord for the lineup reviews. There's literally really very little slate talk. It's definitely different, but get involved at Ship It Nation first. And if you want to check this out, you can always let us know. You can join. It's a one-time payment. You can even split it up in equal payments, but I'll let you talk about it, Sean, like your thoughts on the Mastermind project. Obviously, it's been going now for 8-10 months, something like that. I think it's 10 months now, coming up on a year soon, but it's been a lot of fun. And we've got lots of people from around the DFS space in there talking about, more high level, I think, when it comes to strategy and improving and getting better at your game for sure.
Yeah, I can't recommend DFS Mastermind more to people. Like, it's just a great community to be a part of, and just listening to the countless number of interviews you've done with pros and different people in the industry, and hearing their thoughts about it as well. And also, like, your personal breakdown of things. Like, I think one of the best videos on there is your showdown breakdown that you have done on, Utica. I think it was like Fantasy and McLovin. Just like your thoughts on how their builds came about, and how, logically you can get to, hand building what they came up with. Yeah, so if you're looking to improve on your DFS game, I think the first place you should be a part of is Ship It Nation, but also adding that into DFS Mastermind is just, mashed potatoes and gravy. They just go so well together. And I think that, if you want to get better at DFS, you got to have both, for sure.
Yeah, appreciate that, man. I think that's, really what it's all about. Obviously, there's stuff for PGA, NASCAR, ton of different stuff in there across all sports. Actually got even more coming soon, but like the PGA Showdown one is in there. You're talking about the NFL Showdown, the NFL FanDuel, this 40K. A lot of people don't know about, like, I talk about it all the time, but portfolio manipulation. This video breaks down how I play 5 to 6 lineups when a lot of the field has 150. Portfolio management, how you can apply it, how to be late swap ready and actually know what you're doing going into the afternoon. Like, these are the levels that people don't really focus on. And this is the one you're talking about, the NFL Showdown top DFS pros. I had another DFS pro make fun of it a couple of weeks ago, and that's fine. But it was like, why don't you just go learn from him directly? Like, not everyone can afford that. That's the difference. At Mastermind, at Ship It Nation, our goal is always to be the most affordable. And this shows kind of how Utica plays, knowing what he has at stake and what he's playing for. And then it talks about Fantasy, McLovin, their single entry versus extrapolating out. So you can see like what they would do in single entry showdown versus if they were playing an MME set. So tons of free content you can watch. This is if you want to take it to the next level. But I definitely think with Mastermind, if you're not a member and you want to join it or reach out and have questions on it, just hit me up directly. You can send me, as Kenny said, send me a DM. I'll make sure you get set up with the best price possible. Ship It Nation members still get 50% off. So if you're already a member at Ship It Nation, you get the lowest price possible. But check it out, DFS Mastermind. You can go to shipitnation.com/mastermind if you want to check that out. Sean, thank you so much, man. This was awesome just being able to meet you. Finally going on, talking about your process, giving us some insight to what Ship It Nation, everything's all about. So thank you, man. Really appreciate you, and we'll see you in the Discord.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun. And yeah, I'll definitely be in the Discord. I'm in there all the time. So
yeah, for sure. Everyone's excited to always meet each other from around. We're gonna have more on. I know Newens, who just said that. Actually, Newens is coming on. I think it's October. He'll know better than I will. It might be October 13th or October something. But yeah, it's going to be a lot of people joining us throughout the season. So it's a lot of fun to do it. Nades, appreciate you, man. Thank you guys all so much for watching. For Sean, thanks again for joining us. For Nades, for myself, ToeTagginTambo, let's ship it.